Everyone targets him. Opposition coaches target him. Opposition players target him. Fans target him. The media targets him. No one likes Reid Mahoney.
Welcome to Six Tackles with Gus. Great to be back with you for another week, and we're brought to you by our friends at the Tab. So much to get through today. What's happened to Penrith? Can they fight their way back from a slump to start 2025? DCE talks about a smear campaign. He says he knows where it's coming from. I wonder if Gus does. There's a crackdown on the sin bin this week. Look out. Get the air conditioner going in the sin bin and get the barista ready, because we might have a few people going through. Well, Payne Haas continued to play for Australia. He's considering switching to Samoa, and plenty of other topical matters to get through. Welcome, Gus.
Matthew Thompson, how you doing?
I'm good. You well?
Excellent.
A little cool this morning. Starting to feel winter.
You can feel it. You can feel it. I hate the cold. I can't function in the cold. I can't.
I'm the same. I'm starting to worry about winter. That's how old I'm getting.
Might have to move to a warmer climate, I think, as I get older.
Where? Hawaii, maybe?
I don't care how hot it gets. I hate the cold. It just gets into my bones.
Just makes it hard to get out of bed, really.
I felt it this morning when I walked out and I still had summer gear on, and I thought, gee whiz, I'm not going to get away with this for much longer.
Footy season's well and truly here. When
Footy
you start
season,
to
though.
cool.
It's footy season. Suits a couple of teams, the footy season, the winter. A couple of teams don't get suited by the hot weather, but they get suited by the wet, greasy weather.
Yeah,
We'll
we
talk
saw
about that later.
Saw on the weekend. A few teams were favoured in the conditions, definitely. There's only one team in the comp that's unbeaten, Gus. The mighty Bulldogs.
Long way to go, Matthew.
There is a long way to go, but it's that doesn't quell the excitement with everyone that supports the club. They're all pumped up.
I'm glad they're excited.
You excited?
That's good. Yeah, well, it's a great start to the season. It shows everyone the hard work they've done during the off-season. I think the perception of the Bulldogs has changed remarkably over the last couple of years. They went through a very, very tough period, but they've got a group of players there now that are playing with plenty of effort and plenty of passion, and that's what the crowd will cheer for. And I think the coaching staff have done a wonderful job to do that, and the way the club's been recruited, I think it's been marvellous, and we're starting to see some of the young players that have come through the academy and the pathways program starting to emerge now. And another debut player the other night, Jack Todd, with his family down from the country for the occasion. Yeah. All that's very special. It goes to the building of your club and the perception of your club, and things are really positive at the moment, but you need to keep winning on the football field. That's what sells your NRL club. That result on the weekend, the main result, is what sells your club, and it's a good start to the season for them. Long way to go, though.
Did it without Burton and Kickow as well.
Yeah, they've had a few out. Sam Hughes hasn't played this year, neither has Jacob Kiraz. Probably his likely replacement, Anari Tuala, hasn't played. They've had their injury situations, and they've got a suspension this week to Siseli Tupanua, who's been really good for them. So, under strength again this week, and while ever they can get wins while they're doing that, it's a bonus, but pretty strong opposition this weekend. Newcastle Knights coming off the bye.
While I think of it, I called that game for radio, and when Reid Mahoney went in and put a shot on I can't remember who it was on the ground, but unless he caught him high, I don't see what's wrong with that.
Yeah, agree. I think everyone.
Why was he even charged?
Because it was Reid Mahoney.
I don't get it.
Yeah, there is. I said this on 100% Footy the other night. I think he's one of the most committed and courageous players that I've ever seen. I mean, he's not a big man; he's a small man. The quantity of work that he gets through in 80 minutes every week. He plays 80 minutes every week. The quantity and quality of work that he gets through is extraordinary. He's one of the. He would have the highest output of players in the game. Every single week, his body of work is nearly unsurpassed. And he's very, very competitive. He's constantly on the front foot, looking to influence the game. And every now and then it sails a little bit close to the wind, but he's done a lot of hard work on his discipline. He doesn't want to let his team down. Reid Mahoney gets targeted by opposition coaches, opposition players, opposition fans. He gets targeted by the media. They all scream at the referees to target him. But I think a lot of it is unwarranted. Every now and then he has a bit of a slip-up, but most players do. If they're going to be out there for 80 minutes and competing every week, you're going to sail close to the wind, but that doesn't make you a bad person or that you've done the wrong thing. And what he did the other night, You know, there wasn't much into that at all, but because it's Reed Mahoney, it creates headlines.
You actually sent us through some of those GPS stats you found a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, well, showing you just how consistent he is in his output. I mean, when you're running in excess of 9 kilometres a game at the sort of speed that they're going, it's in those short bursts. And even in the game the other night where he turned up, I mean, he was back in the in goal to field a kick. He was back when they made a break down the sideline, the kick back in field. He was back where the fullback was going to be and caught the ball. His support play, you know, he's a dummy half, you know, 70, 80% of the time during the course of the game. So he's following the action and he makes 60 tackles a week. The opposition team run at him every week because he's the smallest player. You know, that happens with all the small players in the game. They run at him every week. He makes 60 tackles. You know, he bounces off them and he goes again and he bounces off them and he goes again and everyone targets him. Opposition coaches target him. Opposition players target him. Fans target him. The media targets him. No one likes Reed Mahoney, but, you know, we love him.
Well, you do.
We love
so
him.
last year, the aggregate distance he covered per game was 8,692 metres with an average heart rate. So if we're sitting here at 70 beats per minute, his average heart rate in the game's 168.
Yeah, if your heart rate was 168, you'd be in hospital.
That's right.
He's out competing at that level every week. Yeah, he's extraordinary. And to be honest, you wouldn't think it watching him train. I mean, you watch him train during the off-season. It's not as though he's outstanding and above everybody else. It's just the competitive nature of him on game day. He is constantly in the picture. Everywhere you look, Reed Mahoney's around the ball in attack and defence. He's constantly going to the game. They'll have him down at the end of the game with statistics like he's missed 10 tackles. He hasn't missed 10 tackles at all. He hardly ever misses a tackle. You know, he'll bounce off some bigger blokes, but he'll come again. But what he does, he slows them down so someone else can get him. He's not a big kid. Like he's and the body of work that he gets through is extraordinary. And most of the dummy halves are like that. They've all got to be extremely fit and competitive, and they're probably to play the minutes and run the kilometres that they do on the weekend. I mean, they've got to be a little bit smaller. You can't get the big blown fellas running 8 kilometres a game. That's your Dylan Edwards type thing, you know, like Brayley's and those sort of kids that are constantly out there for 80 minutes every week and churning out the minutes. Tedesco's, they'd all be running in that 8 to 9 kilometre category per week. They're pretty special athletes, but for these hookers to do it, who are also making that amount of physical tackles, is incredible. And where he bobs up on the field at different times, it was why I bought him, because I admired what he was doing for Parramatta. And you've got to remember too, Reed Mahoney went from a grand final Parramatta team to a wooden spoon Bulldogs team. He took a big gamble with his career to do what he did at that time. But he believed in the vision for the club and he believed in what we were trying to create and he believed that he could have an effect. And he has. The first year was very, very difficult for him, but as the quality of people and the quality of player around him has improved, Reed Mahoney's shown just what a value he is to the club, and he's been terrific. And you know, every now and then you'll get a moment like that. The opposition fans don't like it, and some people in the media don't like it. But
did he actually?
It's not illegal.
Was it high?
No, that's not illegal. You know, look, don't start me on the modern game and how sensitive we are to collisions and all this sort of thing. And you know, all I'll do is get you in trouble. I'm not worried about getting myself in trouble, but I'll get you in trouble.
Well, look, while we're there, so all 17 clubs have been put on notice enforcing a sin bin crackdown in the wake of what some people are saying was an ugly weekend of football. I haven't seen anything too ugly, I don't think.
Wasn't ugly at all. I saw a game decided by a ridiculous penalty, and that's where you'll get to. If you have, players will play on this. Players will play on this to get other opposition players sin binned or to win penalties, and that's, then you get the other end of the spectrum. I don't see where sin binning more people is good for the game.
Well, I kind of thought, and I think we've talked about it a little bit here, I actually felt the balance was sort of getting right.
I think it's been good. I think the last month has been good, but then people will whinge about it because their team got beaten or because that's just how they're wired, and the NRL will react to it.
It's got to be 13 on 13.
It's got to be fair. The whole thing has to be fair. I think we know the incident that we don't tolerate and we don't want, but 99% of them are accidents. The players aren't stupid. The players aren't trying to get themselves sin binned. The players aren't trying to do anything wrong. But every now and then, in a high-velocity contact sport, it's not a contact sport. It's a collision sport. Right? It's not a contact sport. It's a collision sport. Collision sport. Come and watch them train. It's a collision sport. That's the nature of the game. Forceful collision. Forceful collision. That is the name of our game. All right? So things are going to go wrong. People are going to get hurt. Doesn't mean that people have to be punished for it. And it doesn't mean teams and fans have to be punished for it by sending a player to the sin bin, because a player to the sin bin these days for 10 minutes is a huge, huge loss. And it's a massive thing to overcome. And we see teams that can't overcome it. You know, we had a team the other day, the Raiders. Manly scored 4 tries while they had a player off the field. Sending players off, suspending players is not the solution. That is not the solution.
I kind of worry because in this email that has apparently been leaked, which I'm sure it has been, it basically says moving forward, players will be sin binned if they make contact with the head of an opponent. So I don't think anybody would be opposed to there being a sin bin if there is a nasty-looking swinging arm or something like that. But there are numerous instances where there's grazes above the shoulder which don't warrant a sin bin. So my worry here with that is that we might just have something really innocuous that's going to result in someone sitting down.
There are always mitigating circumstances. You know, players will stumble, players will fall, their height will change. You know, the angle of the tackler coming to the player, he's evasive movements. Accidents happen. A lot of it is reflex. Accidents happen. And a lot of the contact is not that significant. They're not made of porcelain. They're rugby league players. They train for this. We treat them like they're porcelain. You know, like it's... And the players will play on it. We saw someone play on it the other night to get themselves a penalty. And the penalty ended up deciding the game. Now, we don't want that. Players don't want that. But they'll take advantage of it if it's there. So if the rules and the referees become oversensitive to head contact, and there's a hell of a lot difference between head contact and head collision or illegal acts of like recklessness, and we don't see a lot of that these days. Everything that happens is accidental, and some of the contacts that we get are nowhere near as bad as what players make out or what the league would have you believe. Contact with the head is not devastation. You know, we know what we're trying to get rid of, and we can see the example that probably deserves a harsher punishment. But if you just put a blanket over the top of the lot of it, you're going to get some frustrating penalties, some frustrating sin bins. You're going to get penalties that change games, and the fans are going to get frustrated. I actually think it's been good for the last month.
I agree.
I'll give them a rap for the way they've done the last month. I think everyone in the game is now petrified of what might happen this weekend.
Dear, oh dear, oh.
Bringing back the Ashes series is a welcome return for rugby league, Gus.
Yes. How good, the Ashes. It used to be the big thing.
It really did.
As a kid growing up, it used to be the big thing. I mean, I can remember way back in the 60s and 70s, I mean, sitting by the radio with my dad to hear the team announced for the Kangaroo Tour. And, writing all the names down as quick as you could. You'd have your own list there and you'd be ticking them off and trying to write your own. The Kangaroo Tour every 4 years, that was what you aspired to. It would only happen a couple of times through your own career, and everyone aspired to be a Kangaroo tourist. It was kind of the mark of an elite player back in those days, and legendary tales of the Kangaroo Tours. I got some legendary tales around selection back in the days too. But they, there was... It was the big thing. It was the big thing.
So the 25th of October, Wembley, Great Britain versus Australia, or England versus Australia. It used to be Great Britain versus Australia. That's all changed now. 1 November, Everton Stadium, Liverpool, and then Headingley, which has been the scene of some famous international rugby league games over the years. So a couple of iconic venues in there as well, and they're playing 3 tests in 3 weeks.
Yeah, it'd be wonderful. I think it's great.
And then it dovetails into a Cricket Ashes series out here in Australia.
And I would love for the occasion for, an England team or Great Britain team to tour Australia. mid-season and have a three. I can remember they were some of my favourite days, going out to the cricket ground to watch the English team, the great English teams play against Australia in test matches. It's where I fell in love with it. I got a really good story around kangaroo selection. They've all passed away now, so it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
It was a long, long time ago, back in the 60s. My dad used to work at Newtown Police Station, and a lot of the footballers were policemen back in those days, particularly the ones playing for Newtown. And there was a footballer at Newtown called Brian Chicker Moore, very famous player, and he was always distinctive because he was a big, tall man with a bald head, and he was one of Newtown Jets or Newtown Blue Bags back in the days, prominent players. And he was having a really good season. I think this was around about the 1967 Kangaroo Tour time, and I think he was a Kangaroo tourist in 1967. But a few weeks before the Kangaroo Tour team was named, we'd just moved out to Merrylands. I was born at Tempe, Newtown. We used to live in a little one-man police station on the Princess Highway at Tempe. It's still there. I don't think it's a police station anymore, but it's still there, a little old building near the bus depot there at Tempe, Newtown. And Mum and Dad saved up some money to buy a block of land out at Merrylands. We'd only just moved out to Merrylands, and we had a phone. The first time we'd ever had a phone in the house. And all of a sudden at 3 o'clock in the morning, this phone rings, and we didn't know what it was. So everyone's in the house got up because the phone's rung, And Dad being a policeman, you'd expect the unexpected the whole time. And when he answers the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning, we're all up to see who's ringing us at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's Brian Chicker Moore, who's been out on the drink all night with his mates and a couple of things. And he's also been out on the drink with one of the selectors for the Australian touring side to England. And he said, Bruce, he said, I'm on the Kangaroo Tour. They used to call it on the boat because you used to go by boat. He said, I'm on the boat. And Dad said, well, that's great, Chicker, great. He said, no, I'm on the boat. He said, well, that's great. He said, I'm really happy for you. He said, why are you ringing me at 3 o'clock in the morning? He said, no, you don't understand. He said, I know the whole squad. He said, what do you mean? He said, I know every player that's going to be on the boat. He said, yeah, great. What's it? He said, no. He said, that competition in the newspaper where if you can name all the players, he said, you win a trip to England. You win a trip to England. And Dad said, I don't want to go to England. He said, no, you got to come. You got to come and watch me play. He said, I don't want to go to England. He said, I know them all. He said, there's a couple of Smokies on. He said, no one will pick me. He said, there's a couple of other Smokies on there no one will get. He said, if you fill it out in the newspaper, you'll get a free trip to England. Anyway, when it was finally, when the competition was finally won, it was a lot of people very, very close to the Newtown Police Station that had got the trip to England.
So he wasn't bullshitting. It was the right squad.
He had the right squad.
Yeah, right.
Poor old Chicken passed away a few years ago. So I can tell the story now. I can't incriminate anyone.
I don't think we'd send him to ICAC over that.
I'll never forget that story. He's trying to convince Dad into filling out this newspaper
at 3 o'clock in the morning.
At 3 o'clock I know them all. He said, I know them all.
Oh, very funny.
Yeah, all the people who went on the trip who won the tour, I don't think they were very closely connected to Chicker.
The Tigers need to throw the kitchen sink to keep Lachlan Galvin.
No.
Well, what's the kitchen sink? What are you talking about? I'll say this on the record. I would hate for Lachlan Galvin to be lost to the West Tigers, and I'm sure the West Tigers would hate to lose Lachlan Galvin. But that's the reality of modern day professional sport. It's a possibility, and I have no doubt that he and his management will explore the market, and that will make it extremely competitive and very, very difficult for everyone. And there will be a lot of factors that he considers going forward as to whether or not West Tigers is his future. I mean, players like to play with winning teams. They like to play with teams that can win a premiership. They like to play representative football. They like to develop their own career. And they're all factors. For one so young as Lachlan Galvin, I don't think money should be the factor. And I've seen this happen so often where young up-and-coming teenagers, and I'm guilty of it too because I'm in the media. I say he's the best teenager I've ever seen. That doesn't mean he needs to be on $1 million a year right now.
But he will be.
It doesn't mean that he should. I don't believe that he should. Right, but they'll be able to command that because that's the market and because there is a scarcity of it. And as I've said, I think into the future, and when I say into the future, I think, in 5 years' time and probably for the next decade above, whoever's got Lachlan Galvin in their team will be close to winning premierships. I've got no doubt about his future so far as that. But I don't believe that someone should be paying him that sort of money now. His body of work behind him is not sufficient to justify him getting that sort of money over other players that have got a body of work behind them and they've got the results on the board. And this is where it makes the market really difficult, because when you start paying people sheerly on potential or because of scarcity of people in one position, then it makes the market difficult for everybody else. There is no doubt that the Dylan Brown deal is going to make the market difficult for everyone. That extraordinary deal has made the market difficult for everyone. For example, right, and this is nothing against Dylan Brown, and good luck to him, I've said that all the way along, but if Dylan Brown commands a 10-year, $14 million contract, what's Nathan Cleary worth? All right, who has won 4 premiers, is a leading point scorer in the competition, and influences the scoreboard each and every week. I mean, there are deals that come along every now and then that really throw the market into a spin and make it difficult, because then other players and other player managers, they look at their player managers and say, well, what am I worth now? And that's why the salary cap is never enough. Every time we do a new salary cap, it ends up being never enough, because the market for players, for high-performing players, is so strong. And the scarcity of players like a Lachlan Galvin that are coming through the system, supply and demand just drives the path through the roof. Now, for Lachlan Galvin's development, I don't think he should be on big money. I think he needs to be protected from that and protected from that scrutiny. He might be good enough to overcome it, and he probably will. And I'm just talking into the wind. No one's going to take any notice of what I say, and it's not going to influence what happens in one way, shape or form. His manager will sell him and he will get extraordinary money. But with big money comes huge responsibility, huge scrutiny, huge expectations. And if it's not meeting the mark, it will come with huge criticism and huge pressure. And I don't know why you would try to inflict that on a young fella at that age. He's going to play the game. Sports science has got these players now playing well into their 30s, 36, 37. Cherry Evans, he's going to sign a new deal now at 37 years of age. I mean, what's the rush at his age to be getting him $1 million a year and having to face all that scrutiny? The $1 million contracts for the people that are influencing results and have got some experience in the game and that are true leaders of their team. And as I say, there are very few $1 million players in the game, but under the current setup. But market forces, that's probably what he'll get, and I think it's going to be. I hope it goes well for him. I've seen it destroy a number of young players getting too much money too early, and the expectation and pressure that comes with that. I wish Lachlan Galvin well, but I don't think anyone should be paying him $1 million a year right at this stage.
I could see a Dylan Brown type deal being thrown his way.
Probably, but that's.
And the Tigers could be the ones to do it.
Yeah, well, and they will feel compelled to do it. They won't want to let down their sponsors. They won't want to let down their fan base. Shade Richardson is there to turn the club around, and he is. They are turning it around. All right, they're doing really well, and you can see a bright future there. And if they hold the nucleus of that team together for the next 3 or 4 years, it's going to be infinitely better even than what it is today. And they're highly competitive today, which is a great for the West Tigers. They've been through a terrible time. And this fella could be a franchise player. He's the sort of player that could sell the West Tigers and that brand for the next 15 years. So you don't want to lose him, but you also have to care for the development of the player. Now, hopefully, he seems like a mature young man. He seems very sensible, and he's obviously got a good support network around him. Hopefully he can handle it, but I fear for young fellas getting too much money too early. I really do. And I hope whatever the decision is that he makes for his future is based on what's best for his personal development and best for his future in the game. The money will come. The money is the least of his concerns. He's going to earn a lot of money through the course of his career. There is no need to rush, is my belief. So, there'll be plenty of clubs. He'll have plenty of options. But if that's the sort of money they're talking, it's you might think you will have got a great player for your club, but you've put a lot of pressure on a young man very early in his career, and he's still learning the game. Just because I say he's the best teenager I've ever seen doesn't mean he hasn't got a long way to go and a lot to learn. He really has. He's nowhere near the finished article yet. I fear for kids like that, and I think the way our game is set up, it does destroy a lot of young kids by getting too much too early.
The return of Nathan Cleary this week will solve all of Penrith's problems. Yes.
Well, it'll solve the majority of them. It's a big difference. Like we've talked about this with the Parramatta Eels. No Mitchell Moses. If Mitchell Moses was playing, they wouldn't be where they are. They'd be a hell of a lot more competitive and composed and in their games than what they are at the moment. Jerome Hughes didn't play for Melbourne on the weekend and they were upset by the Dragons. And Nathan Cleary didn't play for the Panthers and they were upset by the Rabbits. And, unless you've got that game managing, it's such an important part of your club, that game management halfback role. Because if you don't have that person there, then the game management has got to be handled by the coaching staff and players with less experience in that. I think that, people are talking about the Panthers, where they're up to and where they are, and everyone can see the drain on their talent because our system punishes success, because the salary cap punishes success, and because the market the way it is, that they've lost a number of players over the year. They've been able to cope because the development system has been able to bring younger players in to do the job. And I think while ever they've got the nucleus there, I think while ever they've got sort of Asaya Yeo, Nathan Cleary, Dylan Edwards still there, I think it will help all those younger players as they come into first grade immensely. Now, all of a sudden the other night, Nathan Cleary and Dylan Edwards weren't there. Well, that's 2/3 of your senior leadership group and your playmaking group that are not there. And, had they awarded the try to Moses Leota in the second half, they probably would have won. They probably would have won, so they weren't far away anyway. But they're not the team. They're not the team that they were. There's no risk about that, and they've got to give time for a lot of these newer players and younger players to learn the system, come into the system, and feel part of a team. Building a premiership winning team takes years and years and years and years, and it can be destroyed very, very quickly once you start to lose the key personnel, and if you haven't got the adequate depth to come through. But Nathan Cleary will solve a lot of the issues that the Panthers have, and anyone writing the Panthers off at the moment is, they're just being too premature. Once Cleary and Dylan Edwards gets back, it's going to make it a hell of a lot better for a lot of those players in that team. It won't solve all their problems. All their problems can't be solved by Nathan Cleary, but a large number of them in this competition, you get Cleary and Edwards back in that Panthers side, and they're still a team to beat.
So their run of premierships has been based on a lot of things, but I suppose at the bedrock, it has been their defence. They've conceded 22, 28, 38, 28 points.
Yep. And it's not just as simple as that. Defence, and I've told you this story, defence for me starts with, or a lot of it starts with, your attack. I come from that sort of, a lot of people say, get your defence in order, everything will come. Well, I'm a little bit the other way. My thing is I can't remember in my time as a coach ever, and even if I was doing it today, I would write down a game plan and the front page was always the same. It was just copy and paste the front page every time. Well, it wasn't copy and paste. I used to do it in handwriting. I couldn't use a computer. So I would handwrite it. And the front page was always the same. Go forward, control the ball, kick, chase, tackle. That's your plan. That's your philosophy. I don't care who you're playing, where you're playing, on what time of day, against what sort of conditions or what sort of opposition. You don't get those things right, you're not going to be competitive. Go forward, and what does that mean for you as an individual? What does it mean for a time? How do we go forward? Control the ball. By controlling the ball, how we move the ball, how we go forward with the ball, and where we give the ball back to the opposition, kick, chase, tackle. If you can't kick, chase, tackle, then you don't have any control of the game. You can control the way that your opposition plays by where you give them the ball and when you give them the ball. If you can always give them the ball with a kick and chase and pin them down near their own end of the field to start their set of six, then your defensive line is under considerably less pressure. Right? You have to control the game. To control the game, you have to control the ball. To control the ball is to give the ball back to your opposition where you want them to have it, when you want them to have it. If every time you give the ball to the opposition, this is really simple stuff. I mean, it's not reinventing the wheel here. If you give the ball back to the opposition with a kick, chase and tackle, then your pressure is under significantly less pressure than if you're giving it to them off penalties, turnovers, missed tackles, 20-metre taps, scrum wins. You lose control. When they start to get the ball from set play situations or from turnovers and at your end of the field, you lose control of the type of football they're going to play. They're throwing their good stuff at you. If you give them the ball on kick, chase, tackle, they can't throw the good stuff at you. They've got to work hard and they've got to earn their metres to get out of trouble, and they're going to kick the ball back to you. And if they don't go, that's where Penrith have just won 4 comps in a row. That's why Melbourne Storm have been so successful over the years. They call it high-speed grinding football. Grind your opposition down, break their will and break their spirit. And then your defence is under significantly less pressure. One of the keys to the Penrith defence over the last 5 years has been their tremendous ball control, the controlled kicking game from Nathan Cleary and Jerome Luai, and the great kick chase that they use to pin the opposition down the end of the field. So they're very, very rarely having to defend their own end. And when they do, they're nowhere near as tired as what they would be. Now, the teams that don't control the ball, the teams that don't kick, chase and tackle well, the teams that don't have that philosophy and will find themselves under pressure defensively more and more often. And I can name the teams that do it because of what they're not doing with the ball. So the start to a good defence is a good attack. It's a good philosophy in attack. Go forward, control the ball, which means you're controlling the opposition, kick, chase, tackle, which means you're controlling where the opposition get the ball. That's Cleary. Put Cleary back in, the defence will start to improve significantly, all right? Now, obviously, in other positions, they've got new players and new systems, but I bring it down to where they're giving the ball to the opposition. And that's a very, very simple way of fixing a lot of the problems with a lot of defensive systems. Before you start worrying about tackling and wrestling and systems in defence, worry about where you're giving the ball to the opposition. That will solve a lot of problems. And your discipline, not giving away penalties, and that will solve a lot of problems. Sorry for the preaching act, but...
Not preaching. You're preaching to the converted here. Darren actually sent a question through on Ask Gus, and we'll do all the Ask Gus questions a little bit later. But his question is, Gus, the Panthers bought Blaize Talagi as the 5'8" alongside Nathan Cleary. How come he's only played once so far this year?
Well, you'd have to ask the people at Panthers. And again, he's a very young player and he's going to a new club, new system, new coaching. I'm sure if they thought he was the man for the job, they'd be picking him. It could well be they're protecting him at the moment. It could be that he needs more development physically, mentally, football-wise, knowledge-wise. I don't know. But, the one thing I've known about all coaches, they're funny beast coaches, but the one thing they've all got in common, they like to win. That's at the foremost of their mind. They like to win, and they pick the people that they think they can win with, right? So if you're not getting picked, then obviously the coach has some thought that maybe you're not the man for the job at the moment. Doesn't mean you're not going to be. It means he needs to see a little bit more, or you need to develop a little bit more before he picks you in that position. Now, we were all led to believe that Blaize Talagi had left Parramatta to go to the Panthers because he wanted to play 5'8" with Nathan Cleary. All right, well, that's big shoes to fill. They've gone with the other young fella because he's been in the system for a while and he knows the system a little bit better. Blaize Talagi can play other positions. I think individually Blaize Talagi is a promising young player. He's certainly a good ball runner and a good athlete. But
he went good when he came off the bench down in Melbourne.
They all went good. I'm not saying that individually he can't run the ball and he can't tackle. That's not the thing. But right at the moment, what they need in the positions that he plays, they probably feel that they've got more accomplished options. That doesn't mean that Blaize Talagi won't get there, and it's probably, going to a new club's hard enough, and being put under that sort of pressure is hard enough. Maybe they're protecting him from the scrutiny a little bit. Ivan Cleary's pretty experienced. I think number one, he wants to win, so if he thought Blaize Talagi was the right bloke, he'd put him in. Number two, he's doing the right thing by Blaize Talagi, and he's not putting him in until he thinks Blaize Talagi is completely ready for the role they want him to play. Now, that's just common sense. So, no good asking me. Ask Ivan Cleary. And I think Ivan Cleary would be doing the right thing by the kid. Mightn't be what the fans want to see, and it mightn't be the answer that you're looking for. And it's if Blaize Talagi's looking for the answer for it, and I'm sure he's got it from the coach.
He'll come and ask you.
That's the answer. If you're not getting picked, there has to be a reason. Simple as that.
Yeah.
They've always got a reason. And I'm sure he knows the reason. I'm sure he's working on it, and I'm sure we'll see Blaize Talagi play plenty of NRL throughout his career. Right at the moment, they obviously don't think he's the one they want for the role that they want in that position, or they think he needs more time and they're happy to develop him in the New South Wales Cup or being around the group. So I'm sure Penrith bought him for a reason. They bought him for a reason. They didn't, but right at the moment, they've gone with other options.
Kangaroos coach Mal Meninga looks set to be without one of the biggest stars in rugby league, according to our colleagues at the Sydney Morning Herald, with Payne Haas considering a defection to Samoa. Could he be the latest one to join the players? I won't say the exodus of players away from the Kangaroos. It's more so to do with players pledging their allegiance to their heritage.
And why shouldn't they be allowed to do that? And why wouldn't the game encourage that? Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't the game want to do this? I've said this many times, 20 years ago, I was talking about the potential and the power of the Pacific Island nations and what it can do for our game, and selling our game. We need to sell our game as an international game. It's the international, the representative brand of the football that's going to sell our game any further. Domestically, in the domestic competition, we're probably as saturated as we can get. But internationally and representative football, that's the new frontier, and that's been shown with the Pacific Island teams and the Pacific Island Cup and those nations, and more players wanting to play for their country of heritage, wanting to represent their families and their family names and the history of their families by playing for their nation of choice. I always say this, which country you should be playing for when they play the national anthem. It's the one that moves you, and that's the country you should be playing for. Now, our qualifications domestically need to keep up with that. The world of rugby league can't be dominated by qualification for origin football. My stance on origin football, which is the pinnacle of representative football here in this country and domestic football here in this country, and is what sold our game worldwide, is that if you qualify for origin football, you should be allowed to play origin football, regardless of your heritage or your history. As long as you meet the qualifications to play origin football, you should be able to play for New South Wales or Queensland. We want the best available to play for those. But on the international stage, you should be able to play for whatever country you like. But once you choose your country, you choose your country. You can't be jumping from one country to another. The tier 1, tier 2 sort of stuff. I mean, Payne Haas and Tino Fasuamala-Awi can make a decision to play for Samoa because they're not tier 1 countries. They've got to get away from this a little bit, tier 1 and tier 2, etc., and just make it over and slather. The international stage, you should be able to play for your country of choice where you qualify. If you qualify domestically for origin football, you qualify for origin football, you can play. If you qualify internationally to play for Samoa, Tonga, Cook Islands, Papua New Guinea, Great Britain, New Zealand, whatever it is, and that's your country of heritage, that's the national anthem that means most to you, that's where you play.
So, sorry, you wouldn't have an issue with New Zealand players being eligible to play origin?
If they qualify for origin over here. Yeah, if they meet and the qualifications for origin are pretty strict.
Yeah, but I think they've sort of been refined a little bit to reflect the changing nature of the game.
Well, the game had to change.
Ronaldo Mulatalo is an example.
Yeah, when origin football was first started back in 1980, when origin football was first started back in 1980, A, it was a Sydney-only competition.
Yeah, of
right?
course.
B, our game was 99% Anglo-Saxon. All right?
That's right.
Now, that doesn't represent our game today, does it? It's not a Sydney competition, and our game is not an Anglo-Saxon game. Our game is the most multicultural game probably much anywhere in the world. I mean, it's just, soccer is obviously the forerunner in all of that, but the diversity in our game, and we've got multicultural round this weekend, the diversity in our game is something to be celebrated, but we need to move with the times in qualifications for representative football and in creating a representative platform at the international level. That's the next frontier for our game. It's improved a lot. We're sort of seeing the potential of it, but this is where I say the NRL needs to run it all. We don't need an international board. We need the NRL board to run World Rugby League. to buy the UK Super League, to get England strong, to get France back on the map, and the big countries like Australia and New Zealand, which have dominated Test football, Australia dominated Test football for decades. No one could get anywhere near us. And then New Zealand, once we got more and more players, qualifying to play for New Zealand that were playing regularly in the NRL competition, New Zealand became strong, and they started to be a really good opposition for us. England fell off the vine. I mean, back in the 60s and 70s when I was talking about kangaroo tours, England were highly competitive. France used to be competitive. Well, that's all dropped by the wayside, all right? And Australia became so dominant and so strong that no one could beat them. They could run around on one leg and beat everyone. We got New Zealand strong because a lot of their players came over here and got educated in the NRL system, and then the Warriors came in, and we got more and more players qualified, and it's been great. We need to do that for all the nations. Now, obviously, fellas that want to play for Fiji or Tonga or Samoa or these other nations at the international level, it's probably eaten more into New Zealand than anyone, all right? Because a lot of players move from the islands to New Zealand when they're young to play competitive sport, rugby or rugby league. A lot of those now are moving to Australia for opportunity because there's only so many teams in New Zealand and there's only so many opportunities, schools programs. There aren't rugby league schools programs over there in New Zealand. So if you want to be a rugby league player, there are some players that are good rugby players. There are some players that are good league players. There's some that can play both, but there are many that can't play the other one. Some rugby players are just rugby league players, and some rugby league players would do very well in rugby. So, families move. They come to Australia for opportunity. And, a lot of the kids that we see now Pacific Islands, and you look at all our junior rep teams, it's dominated by Pacific Island players. Dominated. The vast majority are Pacific Island players. But a lot of them, second and third generation Australians. Their families moved here a long time ago. So we need to change the qualifications, and our representative landscape needs to represent the demographic and the nature of our game today. Yes. And the demographic and nature of our game today means that I believe, if you qualify to play for New South Wales or Queensland, you should be allowed to play for New South Wales or Queensland. That's the pinnacle of representative football, domestic football in this country. Then there's the international stage. Well, you play for your country of heritage, where you want to play, where your family wants you to play, where it means the most to you, where you represent your heritage and your people. And I can't see why they can't do that. And it was a huge shot in the arm years ago where those players made the big decision. I think Jason Taumalolo was probably the...
Andrew Fafita.
We lost Sonny Bill Williams to rugby league because he couldn't play Origin football. We lost him to Union because he couldn't play... He played under 16s and under 18s for New South Wales, but couldn't play Origin for New South Wales.
I would love to have seen him. I just think back to that, just at that time. Imagine an Origin series with him and Burgess and Marshall and these blokes. I understand.
Sam Burgess can't do it because Sam Burgess came to us. He came to the NRL as a qualified player from Great Britain. He doesn't meet the qualification. If Sam Burgess came out here at 13 or 14, good luck to him.
Yeah. I'm just sort of hypothesising about what it might look like.
You've got to meet the criteria to play representative football in this country. But on the international stage, why wouldn't we want to grow the international game by allowing these players to play for their country of heritage and where they qualify? Now, some take the mickey out of it to get an international jersey because, their great-great-grandfather flew over that area at some stage in a plane, but... the qualifications have got to be real and they've got to be passionate about it. And, Payne Haas, who grew up in this country but has obviously got heritage, Pacific Island heritage, has made the big decision. Well, I hope he makes it. I hope he plays for Samoa.
So do I.
I really hope he does. And the Australian Rugby League should be proud of that. The National Rugby League should be proud of that we give these people the opportunity to educate them and turn them into professional athletes that can actually make the game stronger by playing for their international country of choice. The game, I won't be here to see it. You will be, but, in 20 or 30 years' time, the game should be an international powerhouse. It really should, because our game is so diverse here in this country that we can continue to develop the international game. Our World Cup should be huge. If only we had an auction for every player at the end of the year, that would be magnificent.
He's such a pro. Gus's NRL Auction House. Now, for those people that have been following us from the start of this little exercise, we've gone to the bank this week and we've extended our line of credit.
I've had players approaching me to get on the list. I've actually had players saying to me, honestly.
What positions are these players that you're speaking of?
I could have been taking bribes. Players want to be on the list.
Well, this concept's taken off. Everyone's talking about it. Beware of cheap invitations out there, ladies and gentlemen.
So the reason we got this was because I said, if every player was off contract, just imagine if every player was off contract. Every player right now was off contract for 2026, and we all sat in a room in October, all 17 clubs, all there with their recruitment people and experts, and one by one they trotted out every player available for the NRL and everyone bid on them. What would they bring? So
we're currently at about 12.5 million. We're doing a 5/8 today. We've got a couple of wingers to go, and then we don't have money for a bench. We're going in with 13 players.
We're not putting together a team. I'm just saying who I think would bring the most money.
So, we spoke about Lachlan Galvin earlier. If every 5/8 in the competition was available and players could bid, think about the IPL.
Mm-hmm.
Number 6.
See, and that's the thing. Like if it's open slather, you mightn't pick the best 5/8. You might pick another halfback. You know, even though you paid $2.5 million for Nathan Cleary, you might go to the next best halfback and play him 5/8.
You might,
as your next option.
But we're not going to do that.
No, we're going to look at the 5/8. I think would bring the most money right now. Crikey, Dylan Brown's just.
Yeah, he might be your answer.
He's just set the benchmark. Yeah.
So. You'd probably, look, the two incumbent Origin 5. Well, Munster isn't an incumbent because he didn't play last year, but he would have if he was fit. So he and Luai.
Yep.
I suppose we're not picking halfbacks, but Mitch Moses started his career at 5/8, so he could. Be an option.
Yeah. So of the players playing 5/8 at the moment, if we went to auction, the player that I think would bring the most money, and you can look at through the competition.
Hang on, Jerome Luai's not a 5/8 anymore.
Well, he's playing halfback, but he's still playing on that side of the field. So Cleary's a right-sided player predominantly. The left-sided players in our competition that are normally where the 5/8 plays are fellas like Cameron Munster, Jerome Luai, probably Matt Burton. Who else? The ones that are actually influencing results. They tried to move Kalen Ponga to 5/8, and that didn't work. So I think they're predominantly the big three. I think Cameron Munster would be the one that people would bid for. He's the Queensland 5/8 at the moment. He's obviously won premierships. He's extremely creative in his own right. He's dangerous in his own right. I have a great love for Jerome Luai, and he's doing wonderful things for the West Tigers. But I think if everyone sat in a room today and bid on the 5/8 that they wanted, I do think that Cameron Munster would probably bring the most money.
I'm just wondering if Lachlan Galvin might bring the most money.
Well, he might, but that would be unfair. Lachlan Galvin has still got a long way to go.
Of course he does. But if every club
don't get me wrong, I'll say it again, he's the best teenage footballer I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean anything.
No, but if he was available for all 17 players to build a club around,
that doesn't mean anything.
Huge money.
That doesn't mean anything. If you miss out on Munster, then I think, fellas like Luai and Lachlan Galvin are next on the hit list. But
Munster's 30 now, though, isn't he? Or over 30?
Cherry Evans is 36. Munster's got another 6 or 7 years if his body holds out. Mm-hmm. Munster influences results. I think he would bring the most money. Trying to think who else might even match that. Cody Walker. Cody Walker's, he's well into his 30s now.
Tom Dearden,
yeah, Tom's probably a halfback playing 5/8. The boy who got suspended from the Broncos, Ezra Mam.
Well, in the grand final year, he was.
Yeah, the young boy Qatar at the Dolphins is a player of huge potential. I think he's predominantly a halfback, but he could easily play 6. All of them could probably play 6 you can manage it in your team. But if you're purely talking about the players that wear number 6 today, then I think Cameron Munster brings the most money.
And how much is that?
Well, he'd be over. I think someone would pay over, depending on who else they had in their squad. He can be your primary playmaker. I think he's 1.6 million, 1.7 million. Say 1.7 million is where he is.
Now he's got himself back and fit. You can see the impact he has on that team. Albeit they were beaten last weekend, but he's been terrific in the first month.
No, he didn't have a halfback last weekend.
That's right.
You know, like 5'8" are 5'8" for a reason. You know, halfbacks are halfbacks for a reason. And that's what makes a team. One player doesn't make a team. You know, they all rely on each other. That's why the combinations are extremely important. But I think if everyone sat in a room and they paraded out all the 5'8" currently in the game today, I think the player that would bring the most money is Cameron Munster.
Okay. 1.7 million for Cam. Congratulations, Cameron. You've just got yourself a pay rise. He wasn't one of the ones that tried to infiltrate your list this week, was he?
Oh, taking bribes. Put me on the list. How much would you put me on the list for?
A few of those players might be sadly disappointed. The award-winning Stories of Origin podcast series is back this year.
You've noticed I'm not naming any Bulldogs here. Because I know what I'm paying them.
Hey, Gussie, put me on the list, bro. It's back for its 4th season in 2025. It's the podcast, as everyone knows, that delves into the rich history and unforgettable moments of State of Origin football told by the people who live them. This year, we're doing Magic Moments, as voted by you, our listeners out there. Last week, we announced our nominations for the 3 episodes pre the year 2000, and here's the leaderboard, Gus. 31%, the Mark Coyne Miracle Try. It's in.
What's a punish?
25%, Arthur Beetson. So that's our Queenslanders, you see.
Yeah.
22%, Steve Mortimer being chaired off the field. Well, if the Beetson moment was, the original iconic moment of Queensland Rugby League, then that one was the original iconic moment of New South Wales Rugby League.
Yes, probably.
MGV Wally and Fatty's Neville's are currently 4th and 5th in the popularity for votes amongst the audience. So I've
been invited to a sportsman's luncheon in Queensland for the Queensland Origin.
Oh, good.
To celebrate 30 years since Fatty's team won the
Fatty
night.
beat you.
So I'm being invited along with Paul Vorton to sit there and listen to Paul Vorton tell stories again.
And just give it to you.
Yeah, that's my role. I'll have nothing to do on the day other than sitting there and listen to Paul Vorton. The stories get bigger and better every time.
That'll be good to be at, though.
Wonderful part of history.
So, some thought starters here for our post-year 2000 Magic Moments. We're doing 3 episodes either side of the year 2000. Nominees are James Tedesco's match winner in 2019.
Big moment.
With 10 seconds left.
Yeah. That's one of the rare times that New South Wales has done a Queensland to Queensland.
100%. On the flip side, Ben Hunt's 2022 match winner at Suncorp Stadium, which is pretty much the equivalent of Teddy.
Well, it sealed the match. It didn't win the match. They weren't behind, were they?
No, it sealed the match, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. In front of a ravenous Suncorp Stadium crowd on a decider night.
I actually sent the vision of that to Nathan Cleary after the game, to show him what would have happened if he dummied the kick and passed the ball. Because every Queensland player had gone in behind the line to get the chip kick, and
why'd you do that to him, the poor bloke?
Just something to put in the memory bank for later.
Oh yeah,
in the memory bank for later. And he agreed. He said, "Yeah." He said,
"Yeah, I stuffed it up."
Yeah. No, he didn't say he stuffed it up. It's a great point. Well, the chip kick just didn't go high enough. I mean, he caught the chip kick on the way through.
It was one of those things that can only happen in Origin. Like everything's on a knife's edge. It can either fall one way or the other.
Yeah, and the only bloke chasing him was Desai Yeo, who'd done 128 tackles and 138 hit-ups, and the lock forward had to chase him all the way down the field. Typical Queensland. Yeah, that's big, but it sealed the game. It didn't win them the game. They didn't come from behind to do it. Like that many times Queensland did it to come from behind to beat us in dying seconds. But Tedesco was kind of like that was our crowning moment.
Here's a great one, and we've kind of spoken about this one in previous series, but not specifically about it. The tackles made by the injured Morris boys.
Yeah, they were great moments. That typified what Origin's all about. You pull plenty of those out over the years.
The Matt Bowen intercept. Another one you don't like very much.
Golden point.
And last but certainly not least.
Brett Kamali said it's either going to be your night or my night.
Yeah.
Tried to thread the needle. Matty Bowen came off the bench and plucked him.
What a great instinctive player Matt Bowen was.
Brilliant.
And the 2020...
And that's, again, one of the battles of Origin. Matt Bowen was a fullback.
Yeah.
He was a fullback, but in Origin he had to play out of position. And playing out of position, he came up with the winning play. That's how good they are, these fellas. That's the magic of Origin. The magic of Origin. I can't believe Mark Coyne's number one.
Number one, 31%. And the last one on our list of nominees is the decider of last year in what, I know, and you always talk about the one that's fresh in your mind always stands out, but there haven't been too many better Origin games than that. No,
well, it was a blast from the past, wasn't it? It's, a blast from the past. When a game is played like that, it's a wonderful thing.
So head to the socials, leave your comment with your favourite moment. Gus is voting for James Tedesco, and all the other Queensland ones can get nicked. Six tackle trivia. We'll get to your questions on the other side of this, by the way. Who was the last Bulldog to win Rugby League's top try scorer award?
Top try scorer award? Bulldog?
Yep, last one. Some thinking music for Gus. Plenty more to come, including a preview of round 5 after this.
Fans always ask, Lozza, what was the best era of league? And I tell them, nothing beats the line-breaking, flick-passing, goose-stepping, Vegas-flying, turbo try-scoring, origin drought-breaking, simply the best era of footy we're in right now. And with more market stats and insights, it's easy to enjoy the best era in footy with the best app in footy.
Tab. We're on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
The last Bulldog to finish as the leading try scorer in the premiership.
For every team?
Yeah.
A Bulldog that led the try scoring for every team.
I have a hint here, but it would give it away immediately.
No, I don't want a hint. The last Bulldog...
What year was it, Jordan? 2012.
The last Bulldog to win this number of tries, 2012. Wow.
You know what?
Wow.
He wasn't unlike Matt Bowen, the way he played.
Wow. Ben Barber.
Ben Barber. Ben Barber was the man. He's also a Dally M winner, of course.
He won the whole Dally M, didn't he? The big Dally M.
Yeah.
Ben Barber. Yeah, he had a stellar season, didn't he?
Didn't he sizzle for a couple of years?
And Melbourne beat them in the grand final, was it? Yeah,
Yep.
They just fell one short. Yeah, he had a stellar season. He was quite a talent, Benny Barber.
Hang on, Ben Barber was in the Sharks team that won the comp.
He was,
Yeah.
yep. He was a
Gal
talent.
always talks about that try from the scrum, where they sort of put on that trick play from the scrum.
Who threw the pass?
Did Gal score it? Gal threw the pass for Barber to score.
Gal
yeah?
threw the pass. That's why Gal talks about it
It's
all.
the only pass he's ever thrown in his career. So he set it up for Ben Barber. There you go, Ben Barber, top try scorer for the league in 2012. Ask Gus, thanks to the Tab. The NRL season's here. For the best time in sport, Tab has the best app in sport. Tab, we're on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
Where does Kurt Mann rank among the best utility players in the comp? Started as a fullback /centre/5'8", and now he's played every position, including prop. Is he an Origin bolter, asks Blake Shipley.
Well, he's Origin tough.
He's a Queenslander, by the way.
Yeah, he's Origin tough. He comes from a little town out the back of nowhere in Queensland. Tough Queenslander too. He's a tough man. Kurt Mann, I actually had a conversation with him back in 2012 at the Panthers. I just started at the Panthers, and I drove up to I'm stupid. I am really stupid. I had to meet he and his manager. They said, we'll meet you at Newcastle Airport. Only airport I knew in Newcastle was a Belmont, that little one on the side of the road there. There's a little Anyway, I didn't know Newcastle had an airport.
I didn't know there was one at Belmont.
Yeah, there's one at Belmont. That's the only one I ever knew. So I went to
It's a RAF base in Newcastle.
I went to Belmont. There's a little airport at Belmont. I went to Belmont and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, this doesn't look right. I mean, I think I'm in the wrong place. Then I had to go all the way across town to meet him, he and his manager. And I liked him. I was buying him as potentially a future NRL 5/8.
Yeah.
And I'd sort of been recommended him and I watched a bit of vision on him. I thought, yeah, he's got potential. And he had a choice between Panthers and Melbourne Storm. And he chose the Melbourne Storm, which was probably the right way to go at that time. Panthers were struggling and Melbourne Storm were a great side. And I watched him very, very closely right throughout his career. He was at the Melbourne Storm and played a number of positions down there. I think he went to the Dragons and played a number of positions there. He ended up at Newcastle Knights and played a number of positions up there. And we bought him for the same reason, his versatility, but we bought him with a specific role in mind, which is the role he plays for us at lock forward, and with all his game experience and knowledge and football IQ, he's been really good for our younger blokes. We've just extended him for another 12 months. He's 32 years of age next year or this year, and but he's still got plenty of football in him. But Kurt Mann is a wonderful utility, and but he's been a utility. He's never really been able to nail down one position in the teams he's been playing in. Because of his versatility, they've used him everywhere. Wherever they've had a problem, they've used him, and his career's gone away that way all the way through. But we bought him with a specific purpose in mind. We bought him to come and play lock forward for us, and he shares that role with one or two other players in the team, and he's extremely valuable to us, both on and off the field. His leadership and his football IQ and his calmness under pressure. And, you know, when he's on the field, we're a little bit different than when he's off the field. You know, the way the coach has got the team playing, Kurt Mann certainly adds something when he comes onto the field, or something different. You know, it's when he's not on the field, it's different. We play differently. When he's on the field, we play differently. And Kurt Mann's a big part of that, and that's why we've extended him for another 12 months, and we'll keep doing that while ever he's got the desire to play and he's physically capable of playing. He's a versatile player. He could play anywhere, but we bought him with one position in mind.
Jenko's obviously a Tigers fan because he says, Gus, the Tigers are flying, albeit a bit of a blip on the weekend. But it is the 20th anniversary of their 2005 premiership. I can't believe that was 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
What do you remember of that team?
I told you, they brought me a contract the other day to sign. The kid was born in 2010 or something, 2011.
Crazy.
Fair
It's crazy.
2005, 20 years.
What do you remember of that?
It was 30 years for Super League. Can you believe it's been 30 years since Super League started?
Yeah, that feels a lot longer ago than 20 years ago. The Tigers 2005 premiership. Yes, time is certainly flying.
So what was the question?
What do you remember of the team that won the comp? That came basically from nowhere.
Yeah, well, the team, and this is the effects sometimes one player can have, and a brilliant young player by the name of Benji Marshall. I mean, I know they had other players there. I think Brett Hodgson, Scotty Prince.
Robbie Farah.
You know, they had a lot of really good players in the team, but the X factor was Benji Marshall. Benji Marshall was the X factor. And an older, experienced coach with young, talented players. That's a really good mix. An old, experienced coach in Tim Sheens with young, talented players that didn't complicate the game for them, didn't add stress to the game for them, didn't over-coach them or over-complicate their roles. You know, the older coach knew that was a team that probably knew had to be coached differently, and because he had a great record in coaching, he could run the roller coaster with them and not be worried about, it was not a results-conscious brand of football. It was purely a football expression brand of football. And around about 2005, I think the dominant teams in the years prior to that were sort of Bulldogs and Roosters and maybe Dragons. They'd sort of come off the boil a little bit. Teams really hadn't risen to take their place. We were starting to see teams emerge like probably Cowboys and West Tigers, and it was just that little. There really wasn't a dominant team in the competition at that time, as there had been for the previous 3 or 4 years. And West Tigers filled the void brilliantly because, when you look down the list, I know that Brett Hobson was a representative class player, so too was Scotty Prince and Robbie Farah eventually, but it's not the who's who of rugby league, is it?
It's not.
I mean, Anthony LaFranchi, John
Scando?
Scandalis, Ben Galea,
Dean Hallertau played for New Zealand.
Dean Hallertau, Mark O'Neill, Liam Fulton, Chris Hyington. They're all workers. Bryce Gibbs, Todd Payton. They were all good working class players, journeymen, I might even say, that were just really honest working class players. And even, Scott Prince and Robbie Farah and Brett Hodgson, the X factor there is Benji Marshall. Pat Richards, Paul Fadawira, Shane Elford, Daniel Fitzhenry. It's not the who's who of rugby league history at all. The X factor for me was the coach, Tim Sheens, and this brilliant young 5'8" Benji Marshall.
They caught fire, didn't they? They just believed that they'd beat anyone.
Confidence and momentum.
Yeah.
Confidence and momentum, and confidence comes from demonstrated ability and preparation. And what he didn't do was overcomplicate the game for them. He didn't. They played a brand of football that suited their mentality and suited their skill set at the time. It wasn't perfect. It was, some of it was, but it probably heralded the arrival of one of the game's great players in Benji Marshall. I was an unabashed admirer of Benji Marshall, still am, an unabashed admirer of Benji Marshall's football. And I think it was so important that he got a coach like Tim Sheens early in his career who didn't take all the risk out of him, who didn't take all the flamboyance out of him, that could see it for what it was. And he put around them a team of hard-working, committed footballers. Look at them. It's not... No. And that's with all due respect. They're premiership winners and will be forever and a day, and it's something I can wear proudly, but that's a working-class team with an X factor like no other. And brilliant coaching and brilliant play by the Tigers at the time. And
one of the great rugby league stories, that one.
Yeah,
came from absolutely nowhere.
Well, then, Lachlan Galvin, they might have another one.
They may well.
You just may well. Dream Buller's another one. They've got I've been saying for a few years, they've got a really good team emerging there. And remarkably, who's coaching them?
I know, it's amazing.
Benji Marshall.
Talk about a complete...
what a fairy tale story that'll be if they can win a comp in the next few seasons with Benji Marshall as the coach and all these brilliant young talents coming through. Give them time. I kept saying, give them time. There's a good team that they'll make the 8. I'm not backing away from that. They'll make the 8.
Let's look at round 5 now. After tipping 8 from 8, I'll give myself a rap in round 3. I came back to earth with a thud on the weekend with 4 from 8, but that actually wasn't a bad result. One of my mates reckons he tipped 0. Which I don't believe. You'd have to really be trying to tip 0.
Or not trying.
You couldn't tip none.
No.
Anyway, he claims he did. Gus didn't know. Gus nailed a couple of upsets on the weekend. Let's see who he's tipping for round 5. We'll give you some tab odds to go with each of these games as well. The betting odds correctors of 6:30 Wednesday morning. And what are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, visit the website or call the 1-800 number. Canberra versus Sharks, Thursday night footy on 9. Live from Canberra. If it was a little cold in Sydney this morning, I'd imagine it's getting a little chilly down in the nation's capital as well. For Canberra, back row Morgan Smithies returns from concussion. Josh Papali'i to the starting team, Trey Mooney to the reserves. After starting so well, they've come off the last couple of weeks, the Raiders. For Cronulla, 2 crucial outs. Kale Iro has a hammy. Sifa Talakai out because of concussion, but they do get Tom Hazelton back on the bench. Malweni Hiroti goes in to start the game in the centres. Canberra hosting Shark, or Raider hosting Shark.
Sifa Talakai got a concussion the other night. Not only got a concussion, he got knocked out in a tackle the other night. Who was the first player to roll him over and look after him and bring the attention to the referee?
I'm going to guess and say it was Reid Mahoney.
Reid Mahoney. I don't see him getting too many raps for that. Good bloke, Reid Mahoney. That was besides the point.
Yeah.
What did you want?
I'd like your thoughts on the game.
Yeah. really interesting game. And now, I mentioned on 100% Footy the other night, I've been watching the form of the teams who went to Las Vegas because we highlighted last year that Las Vegas wouldn't be the complete factor, but certainly you've got to look at it could be a factor in some of the seasons that those teams had, Broncos and South Sydney and Roosters, etc. So I've been watching the form of teams. Now, who would have thought after the first weekend in Las Vegas, where Panthers were highly impressive in beating the Sharks, they've come back to Australia and haven't won a game since.
Yeah, I know.
And the Warriors, who were probably the worst of the four teams in Las Vegas, have come back and won all three games. And Raiders and Sharks are both 2-2. 2 wins, 2 losses. And both of them have had the extraordinary challenge of not only going to Las Vegas, but having to play in Townsville too at this time of year in the heat and everything up there. I mean, why it's scheduled that teams that go to Las Vegas then have to get on the road to go to Townsville, which is the longest trip in here. It's further than New Zealand, Townsville. I find that grossly unfair. Surely they can work that out a little bit better. Anyway, Raiders last week played in oppressive conditions up in Townsville. Daytime football in Townsville at this time of year is not fun, and it wasn't fun for them. It was a game they could easily have won, but they just showed signs of wear and tear to me, both the conditions and the amount of travel, etc. The Sharks beaten by the Bulldogs, but the first 40 or 50 minutes of that game was high-class rugby league. This is a difficult one. Raiders turning back home after a loss on the road, and Sharks, who I think are a genuine top 4 side in this competition, looking to bounce back after a loss at home against the Bulldogs. I'm going to favour Shark narrowly on the road down in Canberra.
You mentioned the travel factor. I actually noticed this the other day, and I thought I'd bring it up.
And conditions. Playing in Townsville at this time of year is no mean feat.
Yeah, but have a look at the Sharks' travel schedule, right? So Vegas round 1, Townsville round 2. They played at home against Souths. They played at home last week. They're in Canberra this week. They go to Optus Stadium for a doubleheader in Perth next week. They go to Newcastle the week after that. Leichhardt Oval, Magic Round in Brisbane, Four Pines Brookie. They don't get back home till round 11.
Frequent flyer miles.
You're not kidding. That's got to take it out of him. All right, so Shark to win on the road for Gus. Penrith versus North Queensland. My goodness, this is an interesting game. Massive boost for the Panthers with Nathan Cleary back because of concussion, which he's overcome now. Casey McLean replaces Brian To'o on the wing. He's done a hamstring again. Scott Sorensen's out with concussion, so Isaiah Papali'i goes to the back row. Lindsay Smith started from the bench last week, but he will, he's named to start the game anyway. Matt Eisenhuth comes on to the bench. And for the Cowboys, it is the same 17 that took down the Raiders for the club's first win of the season last weekend. Can they go 2 from 2 and beat the Premiers, who look a little vulnerable?
Well, they can. Whether they will or not is another thing. I think Cleary playing and back at home. It's not so much back at home. Where are they playing? Parramatta?
Combank, home away from home.
Home away from home. Dane Laurie to fullback. It's certainly a different-looking Panthers team, isn't it? The big inclusion is Nathan Cleary. That'll give them more control and more confidence, a little bit more direction, and that can help their defence at the moment. If your defence is going to be vulnerable, then Scott Drinkwater is not the player you want to be playing against because he is constantly at you at all parts of the field and all parts of the game. Him and Tommy Dearden, Jake Clifford.
Halves were good for Cowboys last week.
Oh, tremendous last week. And, Tolmalolo certainly makes a difference still. Ruben Cotter. Kai O'Donnell, Jeremiah Nanai off the bench had impetus. It's a good-looking bench for the Cowboys, isn't it? McIntyre, Nene, Neem and Hess. That's a strong-looking bench. Panthers bench not too bad either. Eisenhuth, Henry, Garner and Schneider. Lindsay Smith. Cowboys are a real chance. I'll stick with the home side, but I think Cowboys are a very good chance. I'll go Panther narrowly, but not confident. There are some games where it's just a toss of a coin. That's a toss of a coin. That's a toss of a coin. I don't know what the betting market says, but that's a toss of a coin.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I need to give you the betting. Oh, they're $1.23 Penrith. They're $4.20 North Queensland.
Well, that's a ridiculous price. That's a ridiculous price. I could not back Penrith at $1.22. Well, it was like last week, with South and Penrith last week. I said, I think South Sydney were $4 in the market. I said they're not $4. I said if they played this game 3 times, they'd win once. Well, that was the one. I thought they were a 1 in 3 chance, a 2-to-1 chance, and they're betting $4, 3-to-1. So, if that's the one you'd have to back at those prices, I would have to have something on the Cowboys because I think that's a ridiculous price. Penrith are not $1.22 chances. They may win. Yeah. They're not $1.22 chances.
No way.
I think if you played that game 6 times, I think Cowboys would win 2, maybe 3 of them. I think Penrith are entitled to slight favouritism. It's not really at home. It's at CommBank. They're still finding that as their home ground. How many games have they played there this year? 1. And who do they lose to? They lost to a very young Roosters team. So it's not a home ground yet. Cowboys shouldn't be intimidated by, it's I'm nearly talking myself into tipping the Cowboys. I'll tip Panther to win, but they're not $1.22 chances, I'll tell you.
The age-old rivalry reunited. South Sydney versus the Roosters. That's Friday night footy from Accor Stadium out at Sydney Olympic Park. Now, the big story is that Latrell is back to play against his old club, but have a guess what? He's playing in the centres because the fullback, Jai Gray, is leading the Dally M.
He certainly
It'd be hard to move him given the way he's playing.
He certainly is, and he plays the game completely differently to Latrell Mitchell. I mean, Jai Gray is an effervescent, he's an energizer bunny. He's all over the field. Latrell doesn't play like that. I don't know whether this is a long-term move, whether it's a permanent move, whether they're just easing Latrell Mitchell back into the action. I heard that Wayne Bennett was quoted as saying that Latrell Mitchell is their fullback. He'll get there eventually, but he just wanted to buy some time, which is fine. Who could doubt the old coach? He's a marvel, the old coach, isn't he?
He's got his team going great.
Well, he always has his team going great. He's a marvel. Wherever he goes, he just puts his game plan under his arm and off he goes to the new club, and within no time they're playing Bennett football and they're causing troubles. Their first half the other night was brilliant, absolutely scintillating.
Oh,
they just tore Penrith apart. Had halftime not come, that wouldn't have stopped. Had halftime not come, that wouldn't have stopped.
Yeah, it was getting worse for Penrith.
Yeah, South Sydney were just going to continue to steamroll right through them. Halftime was the worst thing that could have happened to South Sydney. And as it turned out, if Moses Leota gets the try, and it was a try, had they got the try, that was 28-18, I think with about 15 minutes to go. I reckon Penrith nearly get over the top of them and beat them. But the first half was outstanding, and now you bring in Latrell Mitchell. I mean, Latrell Mitchell and Jack Whiten in the centres. Have a look at that.
Rabbitohs $1.67, Roosters $2.20 on the tab.
And I think that's fair enough. I think that's fair enough. By the same token, I think Roosters are a genuine chance in this game. Well, they are a genuine chance in this game. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. That's the toss of the coin. Emotionally, everything is going with the Rabbitohs. A lot of confidence out of that win the other night. They're playing good football. What have they won? 3 games now?
Yep.
They've won some tight ones. They're on a roll. Latrell Mitchell coming back. The Roosters, what's the mindset there? They've had 1 win when they had all their stars out and all the kids played, and they brought all the stars back and lost 2 more. They'll be desperate to get on the board. I'm just looking at this back line. He's exciting, isn't he? Nwanga Tawazi, whatever his name is.
Nwanga
Nitawazi. He's exciting, isn't he? He's a good player. Tedesco. Robert Toyer, I think, is a player of great future. I'm going to go Rabbit.
Rabbit to win.
Rabbit.
3 o'clock Saturday, Parramatta versus the Dragons. They've got to find something. Para. New recruit Dylan Walker joins the bench for his first game in Parramatta colours and brings 232 games of experience to the table. Luca Moretti joins the bench for his first game of the season, having overcome an Achilles injury, so Charlie Geimer drops out. And young Riley Smith will start at hooker in place of Joey Lussick. He's worked his way from pretty much outside top 17 at the start of the year, Riley Smith, to be their starting hooker.
Yeah, he was in the Panthers system.
Yes.
As a young fella, and he had to make a decision between cricket and
yes,
very very good cricketer.
He played first grade.
Yeah, but he's also obviously a very good footballer, and he's been impressive with his football. Just
with the Dragons, Emre Gula got 3 games. So Couchman comes in to start, Toby Couchman that is, starts in the front row alongside David Clemmer, and Blake Laurie's been added to the bench with Matt Fine 18th man. The betting odds have Para 240, the Dragons $1.58. Well, if you were to compare the performances from last week, the Dragons would give it to them.
Well, I don't know about give it to them. You know, there were a few factors in the Dragons last week and why we tipped them against the Melbourne Storm, and I think as the weather cools and particularly on difficult surfaces, that there was a bit of rain around last week, a bit slip. I think that suits the Dragons. I think Dragons are going to make some run in this competition during the cooler months when you're playing at night and there's a bit of moisture on the ground and passing becomes difficult because they've got size, they've got bulk. That's when size and bulk really comes into its fore. When it's hard to pass the ball and it's hard to create opportunities, size matters. And St George are a big side and they've got some hard-running players, like your Moses Suley and your Tuapolotos and, Leiluas and Sewers and DeBellins and these fellas. Clemmer's given them a little bit more starch up front. I really liked Dylan Egan coming off the bench the other day. Young fella came out and impressed. He went in boots and all. He wasn't scared. Dylan Walker is an interesting buy for the Parramatta Eels. I think he can give them some control and playmaking ability in the middle of the field. We're at round 5 and everyone's going to win one. Eventually, I think this is Parramatta's best chance this year to win a game. Because St George can beat themselves at times. Whether Parramatta's got the impetus to do it, I just don't know that they're ready to win. I'm going to tip Dragon.
5:30 Saturday. Put my teeth back in. 5:30 Saturday, the Titans play the Dolphins. Titans are $1.53, the Dolphins are $2.50. Team news, Jermaine Jolliffe is back after 2 games out with a calf injury, while 25-year-old Sean Mullaney will make an NRL debut off the bench. Chris Randall starts at hooker in place of Sam Verrills, who has a hip injury. Isaac Fa'asua-Mala'awi is out because of an ankle, so Josiah Paulu is listed amongst the reserves as he nears a return from concussion. Good young, promising front rower. Dolphins have one change to the 17-man squad that played the Broncos, with Max Plath moving from the second row to lock to cover for the suspended Tom Gilbert. Oh, geez, I miss Gilbert. And Liam Muemli comes back from an injury to play in the back row. Gilbert out. Ooh, that hurts.
They just haven't replicated last year's form at all, Dolphins, have they? Even in games where they were beaten last year, they had great try-scoring potential and they were exciting to watch. They just haven't replicated any of that this year. It's been fairly dour from them and a little bit mistake-riddled, and they have their moments, but moments aren't good enough. And my opinion of the Titans. I think we tipped them to beat the Roosters last week. Many saw that as an upset. I didn't, but the way the game went, the Roosters did really well to be leading 12-8 with not long to go. I think Titan, I think the momentum's with them, and Dolphins, I want to see it before we tip them.
Okay, Saturday night footy at Suncorp Stadium. The Broncos $1.16 against the Tigers at $5.20 on the tab, and that huge price largely because of the absence of Jerome Luai, which is a huge blow to say the very least. Jordan Ricky is suspended, so Brendan Piakura comes into Brisbane starting team with Jaden Hunt joining the bench. Latu Fainu takes over at halfback from Jerome Luai, who's out for a game. Centre Adam Dewey's been named to play despite straining his groin in the warm-up in the match against the Warriors last weekend. Jack Bird to the bench, and they've got Luke Lau Lalii coming onto the wing for Solomona Fatape.
Yeah, I'm really keen to watch this game and see what sort of a contest it is. And I think, what price are the West Tigers?
$5.20.
Well, that's ridiculous. It's a lot closer than that. It's a lot closer than that. They're defending better than that. Yeah, I don't think I can tip them to win, but that's a ridiculous price. They're far closer than what that suggests. Yeah, it's probably one the Broncos should win, but I'll be very interested to watch how that game flows. So Bronco to win that.
We're back at Four Pines Brookie for Sunday footy on Nine's Wide World of Sports, the old Battle of Brookvale. That was about 1,000 years ago, so it's probably not fair we keep calling it the Battle of Brookvale. But anyway, they share a rich rivalry, these two clubs. Oh, man. I was just devastated when Turbo went off the field on Sunday. I don't know if he'll ever get right.
Yeah, he will. They've just got to take their time with him. He will. And, you know, it's a loss for the game.
It is a loss for the game.
You know, he's so exciting to watch. Even early in that game, I mean, the signs were good. He had a hand in the first two tries and they ran to a 12-0 lead, and then he was just hobbling on both knees. He was limping on both legs.
Well, he had one bandaged up, and it was the other one that wasn't bandaged up that he's damaged.
He was limping on both legs.
Do you know how long he's out for? Have the club said anything?
Well, the injuries that he's got are anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks. But given his history, I would be getting him so healthy, and I'd be sending him to a warm climate. I'd be just sending him on a mini pre-season holiday and getting him away from everything just to get his body and his mind right, ready to come back. And he doesn't – I'm not talking about his mind so much, but just to get him relaxed and healthy and ready to go again in the run to the finals.
Lehigh Hopewadi takes over at fullback. Clayton Falalo to the wing. He's a good player, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Nathan Brown starts at prop for Josh Aloiai, who is out.
Falalo's a flyer. Clayton Falalo is a flyer.
Yeah.
He's really quick.
He's got a great try-scoring strike rate at New South Wales Cup level. Jerome Hughes listed amongst the reserves as he in fact, that could be an early return.
Yep.
We'll see whether he comes in or not.
Yeah. Another one, I'll openly admit, I got no idea. I don't know who'll win this. I think that you can make a case for both sides, and I can make a case for both sides being beaten. I have no idea who will win this.
Manly $2.40, Melbourne $1.58 on the tab.
Manly $2.40, Melbourne $1.58. Yeah, well, I wouldn't be backing Melbourne at that price, but I will tip them to win.
Melbourne?
Yep.
And then Sunday, 6:15, the Bulldogs trying to stretch their unbeaten start to 2025 against Newcastle. They're $1.52. The Knights are $2.55. I'll just take you through any news from these teams. Well, of course, Sitili Tupanua is suspended, so Curtis Moran's onto the bench. And Jacob Carraz has been named on the extended reserves bench, Gus. Might you get him back?
Yeah, look, there was a thought that he could be back this week. They do have the bye next week, which would give him another fortnight to get sort of like 1,000,000% ready, but he's ready to play. And I think having won last week against the Sharks, you know, I don't know what they're thinking really, whether or not maybe they wait another fortnight.
Blake Wilson played enormous on the weekend.
Blake was terrific. They were all terrific. They really were. And you know, you got to the Bulldogs without Burton, without Kickow, without Carraz. Sam Hughes hasn't played this year already. Anari Tuala is a young fellow we bought from the Newcastle Knights who was outstanding during the off-season, and he probably would have been one of the likely replacements into that side, and he's unavailable. And now Sitili Tupanua, don't start me on Sitili Tupanua, please. Sitili's unavailable. So it's, you know, they're doing extremely well, but even better with the amount of quality players they've had missing. So it's a big challenge for them, and I think Newcastle Knights coming off the bye, you know, and they've got plenty of star power in their side. This was to be a huge challenge on the weekend. So, yeah, it's another big one that the Bulldogs will have to get ready for, but they get the bye after that. So I'm tipping Shark over Raider. This is a very tough round, very, very tough round. If you get 4 out of 8 this week, you're doing extremely well. Tough round. Shark over Raider. Panther over Cowboy, but either of those can go either way. Did I tip Rabbit?
Yep.
Rabbit over Rooster. That can go either way, sorry. Dragon over Eel. Titan over Dolphin. Bronco over Tiger, but beware of the Tiger. And Storm, I don't know. I don't know. Storm to beat Sea Eagle. That's my
And
tips
Bulldogs
for the
v
week.
Knights to round things out. Thanks, Gus. Plenty to talk about today. Interested in who those players were that tried to get themselves into your auction house.
I've got a very full day today. I've got meetings all day.
You better go.
To back.
That's 6 Tackles with Gus for another week. Thanks for your company. Make sure you catch all the action on Nine's Wide World of Sports for round 5 Thursday, Friday night, Sunday afternoon, and we'll be back with you next week.